Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the AIM Growth Partners podcast. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Jaikiran Keerthi, the CEO and founder of VoxMind, the business that's set to revolutionize the identity verification space with their cutting-edge voice biometric technology. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Thank you for inviting me. Really pleasure talking to you today.
No, my pleasure. Let's start with a bit of an introduction, Jay, if possible. Could you take us back a little bit and give us a bit of an insight? Who's Jay?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I'm back. I'm actually from India. So I moved to UK about 16 years ago. I started my career as a DBA into the IT industry. So I moved roles from database to solution architect. And just before VoxMind, I was working as a cloud architect for major clients like BP, SJP, and Slalom. And on both retail side, finance, and also with wealth management. So it's a mix of experience on engineering and also infrastructure. So that's my background. So yeah, I started my VoxMind 2024 incorporated. We were doing some work since 2023. Yeah, that's about me.
Amazing. So you set up the business roughly 18 months ago or so.
Yes.
Tell me, when you set out, I know you'd worked at St. James's Place at the wealth management company. You dealt, as you mentioned, with various different industries, including sort of finance and whatnot. So when you set up VoxMind, what problem were you setting out to solve?
Okay, yeah. So when we were setting up VoxMind, the research what we're doing in the market is to see how those existing IAM, like identity and access management solutions, is a key problem. So while I was working in this industry, you always see identity and access management is quite flaky, I would say. It's always a very complex topic where we need to focus on how to lay out the security well, basically stop scammers or fraudsters to basically do a cyber attack or anything like that. But when you actually come to the business side of it, so businesses usually face this most of the time. We see this every time. But right now, how we are evolving into how AI is growing and machine learning is growing, this has become a very key problem right now for the business.
Also to the individuals who actually use the technology, the actual users itself. So especially when I was working in the finance side and research, you have a user who always tries to identify himself or authenticate into a system, and businesses implement some solutions where they try to protect themselves and also try to give a better user experience to the user. But there is always a friction, and this is where we saw this problem where there is a friction always from the user experience. At the same time, for the businesses, it's very complex to basically come up with an innovation where they shouldn't be compromising either security or the experience. So we saw that gap. So we wanted to basically resolve that gap, basically removing the friction, at the same time have a robust security system for the authentication. That's where.
And interestingly, there's a lot of identity verification companies out there specifically leveraging facial recognition, for example. Yeah. You've not done that. You're leveraging voice biometric.
Yes.
Talk me through that decision.
Sure. Yeah. So biometric itself is a very complex and it's very secure compared to any like a traditional authentication techniques like your PINs, passwords, your SMSs, all these things, because they're always very prone to attacks and they're very easy to break it. When it comes to biometric, because you're actually talking about the physical biomarkers of your body. So for example, you're talking a facial recognition or a fingerprint or a retinal scan or anything. It's basically analyzing your physical features of a human body, and it's always unique every time. But when it comes to voice itself, voice actually has more unique biomarkers compared to facial recognition or a fingerprint. And the good thing is there is no much limitations compared to your facial, because for your facial recognition, you need an absolutely good camera or a lighting or a background and everything. So right, I'm talking, if I'm in this room and trying to do a financial onboarding using some system, it won't recognize me. whenever I do, I usually go to a white background and then do it. You have to have a proper selfie and all this. So there's still a limitations, and it still creates frustration for a user to use it. Whereas voice, all you need is a simple microphone. And you basically, what we are doing is we are extracting those unique biomarkers, and it's proprietary to our technology called phoneme frequencies, where it's basically analyze a frequency of each and every phoneme you say. So this has a unique feature where it's completely unique to every individual, and it's completely agnostic to language, accent, and dialect. So it doesn't matter which language. It's basically a sound rather than a language barrier. Okay. So that's how we are extracting those biomarkers and creating this completely 99.99% confident on identifying a person. And the latency is the key here because it's sub milliseconds, and it's because we are taking a very low voice samples to check this biomarkers. It basically gives you a very less compute power and also storage, so that the latency is quite slow. Quite fast, and it's very easy to authenticate person in less than a second, actually.
And I appreciate you giving that insight. I think I speak to a lot of people at the moment, and the rise of AI is a big concern. And I know we've spoken off air before about how VoxMind and your specific algorithms are able to detect and I guess use deepfake or synthetically generated voices or cloned voices. Talk a bit about that and the kind of proprietary algorithms and tools you've created.
So yeah, that's a good question, because right now we have all these biometric systems, and the key issue what these systems currently face is the deepfakes. So as we are rising into a much more like advanced technologies on the AI side and the machine learning, creating a deepfake takes seconds now. So at the same time, it's creating a lot of problem in business side and the user side. So how we are doing to solve this is the way we develop this phoneme frequency analysis algorithm is basically break down your voice sample into nanoseconds, and we basically get the frequency out of your phonemes. Each phoneme, it's a shortest form of a sound actually when you speak. Because we break it down, we individually analyze those frequencies. When you actually do a deepfake clone voice, let's say like an AI clone voice, there's a frequency, background frequency, like a coded frequency. It always stays in the background. You cannot clone a voice without that frequency, and we detect that frequency because how we break down our model, and it does the multimodal analysis. So that's how we can detect. We are 100% accurate on detecting an AI clone voice, and even an imitation attack, a replay attack. These are different because it's based on your embedded frequencies and everything. So, and this is key for our technology because you can create any biometric system, but detecting a deepfake is a key right now because it's a bigger problem what we are seeing in the business world, right? Because the scams has increased exponentially in the past 2 years on the deepfake side, especially on the facial recognition and the voice cloning.
So from what I understand then, given these synthetic markers, the deepfake's going to have this synthetic trace, almost like a watermark, which your algorithm can detect and automatically, like irrefutably, that's with 100% accuracy, that's a deepfake because it's got this.
And also the another key parts is the pause detection, because the natural pauses how you speak is you won't see that in a clone voice. Actually, when you actually listen with your ourselves, your human brain actually recognizes that not a natural pause. Our system works is the same way. So the technology is mainly focused on how a human brain listens to someone's voice. That's how it works. And it's continuously learning. It's just not mapping it to a template and then giving you the result. It's continuously learns your voice every time you use it.
And tying back to your kind of overarching goal of removing friction from this identity experience, anti-access management, identity verification, simultaneously maintaining high levels of security. We've spoken about the deepfakes and the detection rates and how you go about detecting that. We've spoken about the hardware problem and how facial recognition is maybe a lot easier to overcome. Let's focus for a second on removing friction. You've already spoken about the requirements associated from a hardware perspective, other forms of biometrics. You mentioned with your solution, all you need is a simple microphone. So presumably, a microphone on your phone is going to work. Let's delve into this a little bit more, kind of the friction elements that you're removing from the identity verification process.
Yeah, so the friction, what users usually see, like I mentioned, so right now, most of the systems we use facial recognition as a standard to authenticate. Even if you have a smartphone, you're authenticating to an app, or you're doing a contact center call. The contact center call, you can't do facial, but they do SMSs, OTPs, or email verification, or standard security questions. That is one kind of a friction. Whereas in the facial recognition, you constantly face, even in, let's say you're using an iPhone or Android, any phone. Sometimes it doesn't actually recognize because of the issue where you have these limitations of the lighting, especially. And it doesn't recognize. With a voice, it removes that friction completely, because all you need is this microphone. Whether you don't even have to have, let's say, a smartphone when trying to say you're basically trying to do a contact center verification or something like that, or a phone banking or anything like that. For apps and all, you can have this, let's say your facial recognition is not immediately recognizing you. You can have a microphone where it's basically another layer of way of authenticating into an application. Okay, it's just right now what we are focusing on is adding this as a layer, which is a much more frictionless way to authenticate to some system. Later, we wanted to set this as a standard for how facial recognition has become a standard. Voice is going to become a standard in near future, because right now we are heading into a phase where everyone wants to have a voice technology. It's basically talking to a voice agent, talking to a voice application somewhere. Even ChatGPT, you wanted to search with your voice rather than you typing it and everything. So it's going to become a very standard way of doing or interacting and communicating. So we wanted to use the same voice technology to very seamlessly authenticate or identify yourself. That's the key thing we wanted to set up in the near future.
It's interesting because on the topic of removing friction and I guess sort of democratizing this sort of form of identity verification, something we've spoken about before is when we look at other cultures, actually that level of friction associated with facial recognition is that much higher. Specifically, we look at burqas and hijabs in countries that do wear headscarves, or it's common culture to wear that. So, how much of how important was that, and how much of an angle is that you sort of leaned into?
So inclusivity is one more key problem what we are seeing in the market, right? With these current technologies, is like you mentioned, still there are some parts of the world where they cannot use facial recognition because of the conventional, traditional ways of wearing a hijab or anywhere. So it basically blocks has that barrier to use the most robust technologies. So voice can actually solve that problem, because like I said, all you need is a simple microphone. So it just, you speak and it basically instantly recognizes. And so especially parts of Middle East and everywhere, we wanted to explore this and get into the businesses where we can allow this as a security layer to authenticate a person who cannot use a facial recognition. Okay, and also there are some parts where even in UK, let's say elderly citizens, they might not understand how to use the technology, how to register a facial recognition and everything. Whereas voice, all you need is simply talk about it. So it's a basic communication how a human does it. So you just speak. So the registration is the same way. You register your voice, and every time you use the system, you just talk and ask something, and it verifies you instantly in real time. So it solves that inclusivity on traditional ways, and also for the people who cannot actually use the technology in a better way right now for facial or a fingerprint or anything like that.
So on that topic of inclusivity, really, another kind of added benefit of VoxMind and the solution you've got there is you're making it accessible where countries and cultures that have been sort of left lagging behind because they can't harness the latest and greatest in terms of identity and security. They've been falling behind. Now you're offering a solution that enables them to catch up, have that robust security, the latest and greatest, whilst not having to have that enhanced layer of friction with defined cultural norms.
Yeah, it's a very simple way of identifying yourself. Is like you just say something in your own language. There's no language barrier, and there's no barrier of using a very complex way of authenticating yourself. Like remembering your pins, passwords, and registering your face correctly and using it in a bit. Or you just pick up a phone and just say, I want to sort out this or something like that. Or I want to log in or something. It's completely text independent, language independent, and completely. So you just say anything in any language, in any accent, it just works.
I think it's really interesting because you've managed to lower the cost significantly of companies that are wanting to implement this sort of solution, because as you mentioned, they don't need those fancy, high quality cameras. There's not the hardware constraint, so it's accessible for more and more people. But then on the other hand, from a cultural perspective, if you're working with large sort of Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies, it's something that they can roll out globally as well.
Yes.
So on that, it sounds like your TAM, your market's going to be huge.
It is, yeah.
Talk to me about, what are your, obviously I'm not kind of meaning names, but what is your sort of ideal client? What are the sort of ideal companies you work with?
So the TAM just for the biometric market itself is about 82 billion or something in the next couple of years or so. So that's quite huge market that when it comes to voice itself is about 40% of that already.
Wow.
Yeah, so because fingerprints is gone, so it's no one is going to use it because it's very hardware dependent, and whereas facial is much better way, but voice is even better. So because our solution is a B2B solution, we're not offering this to consumers yet. So we are offering to businesses. So it can be implemented to pretty much any vertical because IAM is key for any industry. So it's a key process where let's say you're onboarding a user or a consumer or anything, and they want to validate it constantly every time. So that's the key process in any industry right now. So what we are focusing right now is start with the CCaaS verticals, basically customer care as a service. So especially contact centers, KYC, real-time identity providers, and all this. So we wanted to get this market traction with these verticals first, and then we want to enter into the fintech side and also banking side. So like your payment authorizations and wallet authorizations and also phone banking systems, because phone banking right now, many banks still use voice recognition, but it's completely text dependent and it's only works with few languages. So like HSBC uses my voice is my password. And I can literally simply get that in a second with some cloning software and access any of your phone banking systems. So it's that unsecure right now because of those dependencies and limitations of current voice technology. So we want to up the game with and get this innovative technology into this much regulated and compliant industries, because having an effect of a cyber attack and also having this on the financial institutions and banking, you can imagine the legalities of that and how it impacts their brand, it impacts their financially, it impacts pretty much in various different ways the business gets lost. So we wanted to give these solutions to businesses to up their security posture and at the same time give a customer experience and operational efficiency.
Perfect, fantastic. And I guess stepping away from, VoxMind for a second, I think one of the things I like doing when I have guests on the podcast is also understanding, their journey and their evolution as a founder. So you set up the business 18 months ago. It's your first, I guess, endeavor. It's your first business you founded. What have been some of the key surprises, I guess, first of all, that you've kind of, positive or negative, that you've kind of encountered along the way?
So it's a great journey. I should say it's definitely loving it doing this. So I was always being enthusiastic to create a product which basically can help economy and also really solve a problem. So the issues we are facing right now is obviously because it's on the cybersecurity side and it's part of that. Getting a market traction for this kind of tooling is quite hard right now. So we are definitely facing that challenge. So you need to really up your go-to-market strategy, your sales strategy, and everything to get those initial clients, get into the market and everything. We already working with a couple of clients doing our POCs with our MVP. So our MVP was launched last December. Right now, our product is commercially ready for any enterprise solution. So we are hoping to convert those POCs into commercial contracts and get into that market. So it was a tough journey to get those POCs, and we made it. So that's definitely a very exciting part. And we obviously found few issues in the MVP, which is meant to be as an MVP. So we developed and fixed those issues. Like I said, now we are commercially ready. The key challenge is that because all the businesses have this standard way of standard procedures and standard tooling right now for IAM, to basically go back to them and convincing them to say there is much more secure and innovative technology is quite hard. So it's a very hard sales journey. We are trying our best to basically get into that, and we are learning right now still. So it's always a learning curve to do anything new.
I guess that's the beauty, but also the biggest challenge of developing something so cutting edge and innovative.
Yes, yeah.
You know, when you're kind of first or amongst the first to market, and you're essentially flipping it on its head. You're dealing with that kind of sunk cost of you've gone and paid all this money for your access control solution, maybe got these latest and greatest cameras that sometimes work, sometimes don't. We're going to introduce something that's a lot simpler, a lot more cost effective, but all of that's sort of now redundant. So I guess that is a big challenge. And
that's the reason why we are getting into saying that we are not asking you to replace your facial recognition. We are asking you to add a layer which basically gives 100% confident that you're identifying a right user or a right consumer. Okay. So the journey has to start with always, as a security, you always have to have multi-factor authentication. So voice is another, which is much more secure and simple way of authenticating. So this is the message we are trying to get in, giving to the businesses, to say that we are not asking you to throw away all the infrastructure, all the hard work you have put into basically in the current process. Just use a much more simpler way for multi-factor authentication. And as the journey goes, we want to set voice as the first factor authentication and then other multi-factor.
That makes a load of sense, because I guess there's so many, Silicon Valley, but also US-wide access control companies that are household names that have been around doing the lock and keys for years and have bought and developed more digital solutions, as well as startups that are incredibly well funded. And I guess if you're going to go head to head with them without that Silicon Valley, funding, it's going to be difficult. Positioning yourself as an additional layer seems like a very, very sensible approach.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it's so right now because it's a deep technology, so even to build this technology takes a lot of effort and money and infrastructure and everything. Like I said, our technology is also creates a much more less carbon print compared to your facial recognition or fingerprints, because we are using much lesser infrastructure compared to your facial recognition and everything. So we need to obviously have funds to manage all this. So that's one of the challenges we are currently facing, is to have that funding fully funded into it. So we are now in the fundraising journey. So we already succeeded half of it. We are just waiting for the other half to just close that out and start working on growing the business, getting into different markets. Right now we are in only UK and Europe, so we wanted to focus our IP to spread across UK, India, Asia, and other economic zones as well. So we are getting into that growth phase right now to basically share this knowledge and also market the technology into different markets.
I guess one of the benefits as well of investing in a business like yourself is, from what I understand, I think you're under the SEIS scheme, aren't you?
So that's a benefit as a startup.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit, just in case there's anyone?
So we are SEIS eligible. So we already allocated 250K to a lead investor, Ascension, right now, and we are looking to have another 250 to close a 500K pre-seed round. So that gives us about 15 months of runway for us, and obviously we are focusing using that money to build up the team and the sales and everything. So we wanted to reach at least 800 to 1 million ARR in the next 12 months. By the time next year, we wanted to achieve that target on the sales side, because our contract size will be at least minimum to 75K, because our business model is based on number of API calls. So it's purely on volume-based charging. Even if you look at like a medium-sized companies, per year, the contract sizes will be about 75K to 100K. So if we achieve at least 50% of those goals, we will have a good cash flow, and also this investment will help us to scale much better for us.
Okay, perfect. And I think if there is anyone listening to this, and I think I might have some people in my network as well, are you happy for people kind of reaching out to you
Of
directly?
course,
Is there any way
yes.
they should go?
No, no,
Or
absolutely, totally. I mean, I'm doing as a founder, as me and my co-founder are doing our own sales right now. We don't have any
yeah.
specialized team, so we are doing. Of course, yeah, anyway, yeah, that would be amazing from your network if anyone wants to listen to more on this technology, wants to do
Yeah.
a POC. We are, like I said, we are POC ready. We can deploy it in a day. So yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Interesting. And I guess the last question I have for you,
Yeah.
you mentioned some of the challenges you've had going up against some of these other big cyber companies, operating in, although you're in your own sort of niche, you've got revolutionary technology, you probably are going to be at risk of being bundled into quite a crowded market.
Yeah.
You said you're enjoying the journey so much so far, though, despite these challenges. So what would your advice be to people if they are looking to set up a business, whether it's in cybersecurity specifically or technology generally in 2025?
Technology or cybersecurity. I mean, it's not about any specific field. Even doing a startup on any field is quite a hard journey. I would. I mean, it's definitely amazing experience to do it. I would love to do it for all the coming years. The only advice I would say is you need to hustle. Otherwise, you just can't. You in this world, and you're constantly seeing every single day technology is improving, more innovations coming, and there's more startups coming. People are using ChatGPT or any AI technology to create wrappers and everything. I mean, unless you have a very solid, innovative technology, I think it's very hard to even to start a business, to be honest. That's I mean, I'm with my help of my co-founder found that really innovative technology to basically get into that and start our own business and grab the market. But there are many people who are doing really amazing stuff on the technology side. I mean, we constantly learn from the fellow founders all the time. So I would say just hustle all the time. That's the only advice I can give.
Don't get complacent and keep hustling. Do the
Yeah,
hard work that no one else wants to do.
I mean, I have two kids. My second kid is 2 years old. I mean, it's a very hard work with the family, with the kids, and with the business. It's which doesn't pay you right now yet, and that's the another hard bit. So you just need to hustle. There will be times where you're actually be feeling very low and completely demotivated, but you just need to pick up a day and pace and just go, and you will love it at the end of it. Once you see that first customer coming in and say, okay, I'm going to use your technology and your innovation, that completely changes everything. So yeah, it's definitely amazing.
I guess it's that validation, isn't it? And I
Yes.
did say it in the last question, but around, when you're feeling low and when you're feeling demotivated, what tactics have you employed? You mentioned, reaching out and being in a community of fellow founders. How important has that been, and what other kind of strategies do you use in those types of times?
My strategy is always I used to go back. I have very good mentors in my network. Mentors are amazing. I mean, you need to find out the right mentor who has done this before,
Yeah.
and who knows this journey, who knows everything about fundraising, startup journey, team building, leadership, and all that sorts of things. They know it much better. So I always go back to them and get an advice and do a validation if I'm doing it right or wrong, or what is the other way to do it, or something like that. That's the key thing I've learned in my journey in the past 18 months is if you don't know something, just go and ask. And if you're demotivated, just go back to them and say, I'm facing this problem. What should I do? I 100% sure that they will definitely support you because they know what they've been through that. And sometimes, yeah, it's just you need to pick up and just go. I mean, of course, your family support needs to be there. Otherwise, you just can't do this. So, yeah, I mean, it's always mentors, fellow founders, and your family is the biggest support. And that's what helped me as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I think there's certainly a few things that kind of resonate with me, not being necessarily in the technology space or cybersecurity space as yourself, but as a relatively new founder. I mean, definitely a lot of those things sort of resonate, and they're definitely things it's so important having that support network and things to kind of fall back on. And once again, getting that validation when you get that first client or first couple of clients that actually say, this is different, this is unique.
Yeah.
This isn't something we've come up against before, but we want to give it a go. You think, wow, okay, that's worth it. Then when everyone's trying to put you in a certain box, oh, you're this or you're that or you're whatever, you say, not quite. Is anyone ever going to get it? But as soon as you get that first person you see the light bulb switch on, you think, fantastic. Okay,
it's a biggest celebration. Definitely. We are a small team. We are just 4 people with engineers and my co-founder. And the moment when we onboarded the customer and signed the contract, that just gives you nothing can beat that happiness. So because the hard work you have put in all those months, night and day, and you're working on to create a product, and someone is actually using that and paying you money is the biggest validation you can get.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it's been a thrill having you on the podcast today and understanding your journey, looking at where you kind of come from over the last 18 months, even before that, looking at the real world problem you're solving, how you're removing friction from the identity process, you're creating lower cost solutions whilst also allowing, countries and cultures that have previously sort of been neglected by a lot of these latest, greatest identity verification technologies. So we've covered a lot, and I thank you for sharing your kind of key lessons learned as well. Any sort of final thoughts from you, Jay?
No, thank you so much for having me, and I'm really love to share all these insights every time, because it's definitely people need to know about these innovative technologies. It's more of an education we wanted to share. It's just there's no point keeping all this knowledge for yourself, and it's the more you share, the more people will understand it. But this is one way of doing it, so I'm really appreciate for doing this with me, and thank you so much. And I would love to see this in the real when you actually share this. Yeah, I would love to do. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Absolutely agreed. It's been a pleasure, Jay. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, David.